Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm sitting down with a fantastic guest. I'm super excited to have her on. So, for any of you, if you've ever really truly wanted to understand a spirit, you can't just take a look at the liquid in a glass. You have to look at the soil it came from, the hands that made it, the culture that surrounds it. And very few people have captured that entire ecosystem, both in words and through the lens of a camera, quite like this guest today. So today we are sitting down with Emma Janzen. She is a James Beard Award winning author, a world class spirits journalist, and a fixture on the Drinks International bar world. And you know her from her work from Punch, the New York Times, and her best selling and her defining book of Mezcal. Welcome to the show, Emma. How's everything going?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Me too. I was I was not aware of your game until recently and everything you've been doing. And once I looked you up, everyone speaks volumes of you. So definitely
Thank you.
excited. So, you have been busy. What recent projects, what have you been going on? I know you stay doing something.
Yeah. No, it's been a very busy year. The most recent project that came out was in June. It's the second book that I've written with Toby Maloney, veteran bartender from the cocktail scene. It's called The Classic Cocktail Sessions. And it's a really I really am very proud of this book. It's very energetic. It's kind of a different way of looking at these drinks that we think we all know. It's kind of punk rock. It's super cool. And I'm really excited that it's finally out in the world. It just came out in June.
I'm gonna have to pick that up. When you said it's kind of punk rock and energetic, tell me about that. Can you expand on that for me?
Yeah, I mean, it is in both tone and visuals. So, the idea was Toby and I hanging out with people at like a divey kind of cocktail bar on a Sunday afternoon and the windows are open and it's lovely and we're just hanging out talking about how to make these drinks. How to make these drinks in a way that where you as either a new bartender or as someone who just likes to make cocktails at home can kind of dial in the specifics on these the Negroni, the Martini, the Manhattan so that you can get the right balance, texture, temperature, and aroma in the same way that like a bartender would, at the bar down the street. Basically giving people just little tips and tricks and pathways to follow to improve their skills at home. But it's done in such a fun way, right? So it's just super casual. And with the design, we wanted it to look unlike any other cocktail book that had come before because our approach is so different based.
Maybe that's also why you approached it in this fashion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean my entryway into this world of cocktails and spirits was through writing. I was working in a newspaper in Austin, Texas.
Mhm.
And this was like 2008, 2009. And that's when the cocktail scene kind of started to trickle down to that part of the country.
Mhm.
And no one was really writing about it in a way that was taking it as a serious movement in the same way that they would write about, the something happening in the food scene, for example. Um,
Fair.
or even craft beer. Everyone was writing about craft beer at the time and like not necessarily writing about like this new cocktail thing.
Mhm.
It was mostly people just kind of complaining about how expensive they were and how like fussy they were, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, but I started to see these stories. Felt like a movement,
Mhm.
and and so I ended up writing like covering the whole drink scene for Austin, Texas, for several years at the newspaper. Um, Moved to Chicago to actually get out of it. I was more interested in getting back into writing about architecture and design.
Mm.
Um, and that didn't really pan out. All of my contacts were in the food and drink scene. I needed work, so I just started pitching, everybody who I knew, and it was going really well. I wrote for Bon Appetit for a while. Um, I wrote for Serious Eats, which had like a very strong cocktail component at the time, under Maggie Hoffman. I wrote for Food Republic under Matt Robard. who now runs the Taste podcast and has his own books. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. It's been a world that I've been absolutely fascinated in. I mean, even before writing about that kind of stuff, like in high school, I wanted to be a barista, and then in college, I wanted to be a bartender. And so, like, the human part of this world and the cultural part of this world has always been super fascinating to me.
I I have that exact appreciation. Hence, this show, like this whole podcast, is
Yeah.
based off that, like the people aspect is so intriguing and so much fun. And I don't think you said it perfectly. I don't think bartenders, even to this day, probably get as much love as we talk about chefs.
Sure.
And,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and they are equally as part of a lot of the happiest moments of my life.
Yeah. And so many interesting stories and like cocktails and spirits and I mean any other drink, right?
Mhm.
Beer, wine, coffee. All of them have just as much to say about culture and are reflective of culture and certain moments in time, as food is. And so, but I think because not as many people there are more writers now who write about drinks than there ever have been before. But when I started out, there were very, very few. And so it was just this big gold mine of stories, right?
Yeah.
To tap into. It's
Tell me why that even came about.
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with mezcal while I was at the newspaper, because it was also around the time when that category was starting to expand beyond that kind of first wave of like Del Maguey, Illegal, Sombra. We were starting to see producers like Vago come into the scene. And I remember just being so fascinated by first the flavor, right? And the diversity of flavor. Like no two bottles taste exactly the same. Some are, they just taste like being dropped into a dusty desert. And that's just been baking in the sun for days. And then there are other ones that, taste really lush and green and some of my favorite ones taste like I'm not like a huge jalapeno person. Like
Really?
I don't like spicy margaritas necessarily, but like I like mezcales that have like that essence of like a green pepper, like a jalapeno pepper, because some of them have that. And so at first it was really the flavor and it was just being like shocked with every time I would try one and it would be so different. Because I was used to drinking whiskey, right? Like I was like um a whiskey and Coke kind of girl, like in
This
college.
is where you
And
started and you ended up here.
yeah, I know, right?
That's awesome.
So just being, like of course there are whiskeys that have, subtle nuances between each kind, but and the mezcal it's so dramatic and so that I got really excited about digging into the why of that. And then when I discovered that like, this hundreds of years of history and culture and the way that it represents the people who make it and the place where it's made and it's just so expressive. And so the first article that I had run in the newspaper was about mezcal. And it was just like a what is mezcal? Because nobody knew at the time. I had a book about it. I always knew that I wanted to write a book. I knew I had one in me. But it was the publisher who actually reached out to me about the idea in like 2015 or early 2016-ish. I'd written a story for Imbibe about the rise of the mezcaleria style bar in the United States. And they read
Mhm.
it and they said, "Do you think this could be a book?" And I was like, absolutely, it could be a book. I didn't think that I was the one to write it because I love the spirit, but was not an expert by any means. Um, but when I started to look at the landscape of like written material about mezcal, like there just there weren't resources out there in English that I felt like fully captured like the essence of this spirit, right? Like I didn't see anything out there where someone approached it as a reporter
Mhm.
and as someone who like cares about culture and cares about like the soul of the thing. So ultimately I said yes because I was like, oh, I want to read this book and like maybe I can just try and not fuck it up kind of thing.
That's fair. That's fair.
That
And
was the goal.
obviously you did.
That kind of stuff. And as I've been digging into like the planning of this second edition, it's become really quickly clear that like this book was so much about that one time and place, right? It was about 2016 and what led up to that moment. And so much has changed that like I feel like I'm basically kind of rewriting the whole thing. Like it won't be the whole thing because that would make my editors very upset. But it is essentially going to be kind of a brand new book. And my voice has changed. Like my
Uh,
writing skills have changed. My perspective has changed.
the
And
world of Mezcal
so
has changed.
the whole world, I mean, just in 10 years, uh, everything has changed.
Yeah.
Um,
And we alluded to it earlier, all the other factors that play into the spirit, those dynamics are ever changing and ever evolving.
yeah,
And I'm
100%.
certain 10 years ago versus now, there is so much more information that you probably found and you've dug
Yes.
into and you're aware of that you weren't aware of at the time.
Oh, it's insane. And I mean, really just resources.
So, for anyone listening at home, do you have any upcoming projects outside of obviously your most recently released book? Anything do you like people to where they can find you, subscribe, hire you as a photographer, or
Yeah. Um, I'm basically in hiding for the rest of the year trying to finish the books that I'm working on. But yeah, next year the second edition of Mezcal will come out. Next year there's a cocktail book about Mexican American cocktails that I'm currently in the editing process with Nacho Jimenez from Super Bueno in New York. That's just
talk more about the cocktail snobs, all that.
That's right. That's right.
Awesome. But thank you, Emma, for coming on the show. Guys, everyone listening at home, make sure that you give her a follow, hire her as a photographer. She's trying to break out, even though she's been already successful. Emma, give yourself credit. And obviously, check out the Classic Cocktail Sessions book. I'm going to order it after we hang up. And I, for one, enjoy having Bartender's Manifesto here, even if it's just to be nerdy about the advanced techniques. So definitely, and the Mezcal book, it's a beautiful book. Get ready for part two. So get looking forward to it. As always, guys, take care of yourselves, drink responsibly, don't drink and drive.